good afternoon, everybody else. I'm very happy and proud to introduce Mr. Prabhas Sahai to all of you. I got a chance to work with Mr. Prabhas Sahai in Mumbai Railway Vikas Corporation for 3 years, between 2014 December to 2017 December, where he was the chairman and managing director. Mr. Prabhas Sahai is a mechanical engineer of Indian Railways. He has worked as he's worked in various places, but some of the notable postings, I suppose, would be DRM Pune and Chief Safety Officer, Southeast Central Railway, and AGM, Southeastern Railway. Mr. Prabhas Sahai is a I think Mumbai Railway Vikas Corporation is one place where he has worked the longest in its various avatars. It's been involved with its planning and implementation and long interactions with World Bank in the process. He's an extremely well-read person, very organized in his working. So many of us who work with him. I mean, I don't want to embarrass you, sir, but I just cannot help saying this every time. And I don't want to take away from his time. So I'll hand over the session to you. I hope everybody enjoys the session. Thank you, sir.
How do I share my screen?
Sir, you're already a co-host, sir.
Okay.
You can share your screen, sir. Use that green button, sir. Green button, share screen.
Share screen.
Yes, sir.
That's fine. Is this screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
It is visible.
Yes.
Should I start now?
Yes, sir.
Please, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I think you have had an interesting session in the morning, and you have already got a flavor of what multilateral and bilateral agencies do, and what are their overall setups, and how they go about project financing and infrastructure financing. I had the opportunity of working with the World Bank for a long period, so especially as part of Mumbai Railway Vikas Corporation. And the project we are talking about is Mumbai Urban Transport Project. Now, before I start my presentation, just a brief about the city of Mumbai. It has a GDP of around 350 to 400 billion US dollars, which is more than 10% of India's GDP. It contributes more than one third of the income tax, 60% of the customs duty, and around 40,000 crores of corporate tax. I don't have the GST numbers, but excise used to be around 20-25%. GST, I'm not sure how that would be calculated. Now, next part is what led to the such high growth of the city of Mumbai. The lifeline of the city, as all of us know, is the suburban railway system. It carries 53% of the motorized trips in the city, 78% of the total passenger kilometers, 376 route kilometers, 1,000 track kilometers, 8 million passengers per day. That is 80 lakh trips every day in this city, more than 3,000 trains, and around 3,000 plus coaches. And this is operated and maintained by Central and Western Railways. Now, the project of Mumbai Urban Transport Project was to upgrade this suburban system. But before I go ahead, I just want you to have a look. I think in the previous session, something was told about what are the priorities of these multilateral and bilateral agencies. I'll just show you various missions of all these agencies. The World Bank says to end extreme poverty, to promote shared prosperity. Now, this is their current mission. ADB, reducing poverty in Asia and the Pacific. AIIB, social and economic outcomes in Asia to be improved. The new development bank, support infrastructure and sustainable development, development through innovation and cutting edge technology. KFW, improve the economic and social conditions. JICA, build a more peaceful and prosperous world. Now I've chosen these 6 agencies because these have been involved with the railways at some point or the other. So all of us are aware of these agencies. There are other agencies also which were told in the previous session. Now going by the mission which they have put on their websites, do railway infrastructure projects qualify for funding through these agencies? Today we know the answer is yes, but the railway infrastructure project has to fall in line with what is their final mission. They may dilute it to some extent, but then they have go ahead, I'll just show you the project cycle. This I've taken from the World Bank project cycle. The first part is country assistance strategy. Today they call it country partnership strategy, where based on their experience, they devise what are the interventions to be done in the city as in the country as such, and which are the areas they want to look at. Then next stage is project identification, project preparation, project appraisal, then negotiation and loan approval, then implementation and supervision, then implementation and completion, and then final post-completion evaluation. Now, if you look at the project cycle of ADB, it is almost similar. Similarly, for KFW and JICA, what happens is there is more of interaction between the agencies and the borrower compared to the multilateral agencies like World Bank, ADB, AIIB, etc., etc. Now I'll run through the entire process of the World Bank loan, the World Bank project implementation, starting from project identification for Mumbai Urban Transport Project. Just your background, there was a project called Bombay Urban Transport Project in late 70s. It was primarily for procurement of buses and was sponsored by Government of Maharashtra. The Government of Maharashtra again approached the World Bank for another loan for Bombay Urban Transport Project 2, but the World Bank said they want substantial strengthening of suburban railway network, without which the public transport in Bombay cannot be improved. And so a comprehensive transport study was done by Mrs. W.S. Atkins from UK. Now what they suggested was that major investment is to be done in the improvement to suburban railway system rather than roads. And therefore an MOU was signed between Chief Minister of Maharashtra and Railway Minister that railways will participate in BOTP2, and funds for BOTP2 will be shared by state government and Government of Maharashtra in 51:1 basis. This was signed in 1993. The CTS report was submitted in 1994, and out of an 11,000 crore investment, 7,000 crores was proposed in suburban railway system. To carry forward this, a suburban infrastructure unit was set up in Central Railway, and the World Bank gave preparatory facility advance to Indian Railways. Now, project preparatory facility advance is a kind of a grant given by the World Bank, or other agencies also give it under different names, for preparing the project. For once the identification has been done, how do you prepare the project? For that, they give this advance. In case the loan comes through, it gets amalgamated as part of the loan. If the loan doesn't come through, it remains a grant and is not to be repaid. As part of this PPF study, 4 studies were conducted: financial and institutional study, system planning and simulation study, EMU remanufacture and new specifications, and DC to AC conversion study. Now, these studies were the basis on which the final project identification was done. The financial and institutional study gave us the structure required for the implementing agency and how to make Bombay Suburban a financially sustainable entity. System planning and simulation study, it was again done by Atkins. They had a simulation model. They worked out around 15 options for the suburban railway infrastructure projects and came to a final conclusion: what is the best and optimum solution required for the city, keeping into view the various interventions in the road infrastructure which are taking place. The EMUs had to be upgraded because DC to AC conversion was to be done within Mumbai. So a timetable had to be prepared. How do we rolling stock from DC to AC traction, and how do we improve the performance of the rolling stock getting 3-phase propulsion system? DC to AC conversion study was done by internally and by RITES, and by the time this project was approved, it had already been sanctioned on Central and Western Railways. As a result of all these studies, 14 rail projects were identified. The objective was to bring down the peak period loading in trains from 5,000 per coach per train to 3,000, segregate the suburban train operation from the mainline passenger and freight services. The completion time was 10 to 12 years, and the cost on 98-99 prices was 5,600 crores. When we approached the World Bank for this loan, the project was renamed as MUTP because by that time Bombay was renamed as Mumbai, and because it was not follow-on project for BUTP, it was called MUTP rather than BUTP 2. And it was again bifurcated in 2 phases. Phase 1 included 9 works, which were to be completed by 2008. And the balance were to be taken up in phase 2. The constraint was that World Bank was not willing to fund more than $500 million US dollars for the project, for the rail component, and there was a road component also. I have just listed out the road component just to give you an understanding of. There was a rail component, there was a road component, and the third component was rail resettlement and rehabilitation of project affected households, both for the railways works as well as the road works. And for implementing the project, Mumbai Railway Vikas Corporation was set up in 1999. Equity 50:49, so it's a central government PSU, project investment 1:1. The assets created by MRVC are transferred to Indian Railways. It's just a book transfer, no money transaction. And the objective was to integrate suburban rail capacity enhancement plans with urban development plan for Mumbai. Now, once the project was identified, we worked with the World Bank, and this was the first major infrastructure project on Indian Railways, which was to be undertaken with World Bank assistance. There were some procurement projects done earlier, like modernization of workshops. Certain machinery and plants were procured for workshops. But there was no major infrastructure project before this, which was done with the help of a multilateral agency. So we went down the project design process step by step. I'll just go through that now and tell you how MUTP fitted into it. Now, the project design essentials, there has to be a goal. Now, the goal has to be in line with the country partnership strategy of the multilateral agency, as well as it should be in line with their mission and objectives. So it is not that you take up a project and tell them, I want so much money for this new line, and they will fund it. The goal has to be clearly defined, and goal has to be aligned in with their mission and objectives, as well as the country assistance strategy. Once the goal is defined, there has to be an immediate objective, which is the purpose. I want to do this. I want to reduce crowding. I want to improve public transport by reducing journey time, whatever is the purpose. Then, of course, the outputs, what we are expecting, how many track kilometers, how much rolling stock, this, that, whatever. Now, these outputs need not necessarily be tangible outputs like number of or track kilometers. The outputs can also be in terms of institutional strengthening, improving the legal framework, and things which will create capacity for future development. Then the activities which have to be performed to achieve the outputs, and inputs would be monetary and other resources. Now, goal as we define, what is the long-range vision to which the project will contribute? In the case of MUTP, goal was defined as reduce urban transport bottlenecks, support urban development, and improve performance of public sector. Now, if you look at the urban transport bottlenecks, urban development, performance of public sector, these are the areas which were in line with the World Bank objectives of improving quality of life in urban centers in developing countries. And this is how this goal was defined. So I'm just trying to tell you that, of course, it's a project which has physical outputs, but the goal was to do this. Now the purpose, why is the project requirement? Which development problem or a constraint will it resolve? What immediate outcome will it achieve? Now, in case of MUTP, the purpose we had defined as to facilitate urban economic growth and improve quality of life by fostering the development of an efficient transport system, including effective institutions in Mumbai metropolitan region. Now, if you see this, facilitate urban growth and improve quality of life, this falls in line with whatever is the mission of the World Bank. Now, development of an efficient transport system, this talks essentially means how do we make it sustainable? Effective institutions, in case of railways, MRVC was set up. Then in case of road, a traffic management unit was set up. Then they had a new setup where it was only looking after resettlement and rehabilitation. So new institutions were also created were to be created as part of the purpose of this MUTP. Now the outputs, these are some of the tangible outputs which all of us can see. 93, I'm only talking about rail component right now, 93 kilometers of track, DC to AC conversion of 645 line kilometers, 51 additional EMU rakes, then dual voltage rakes, maintenance facilities, signaling improvement, technical assistance, accounting and financial management. Now, activities, we all know what are the activities to be performed to get the correct outputs. And the inputs, funds, technology, equipment, civil works, contracts, consultants, trainings. Now, in this inputs and activities, a lot of support was provided by the World Bank. What in the previous session was told as World Bank has its own consultants, but they also have of knowledge bank available with them and people who are aware of what is happening. So a lot of support in this area was provided by the World Bank. Now the project framework, the format is goal, purpose, output, activities, inputs. There has to be a performance indicators and targets for all of them. There has to be a monitoring mechanism, and assumptions and risks have to be identified and put on record that this is what we have assumed and these are the perceived risks. and how do we go about it, mitigating them. Now, indicators normally must ensure interest of all stakeholders. We can use proxy indicators. It is like if we are looking at something improvement in health, then proxy indicator would be how many patients are coming to OPD in a hospital. The indicator should normally be leading that if they can predict, yes, something is going wrong, and then you take a corrective action rather than after doing everything and then you measure whether things are right or wrong. World Bank and ADB, they also have pre-designed indicators based on their experience, which can be utilized. Obviously, the indicators have to be measurable and baseline data has to be collected. Now, targets are explicit statements of desired results at a for any indicator at specified point of time. It can be in terms of quantity, quality, or time. It should be appropriate and attainable, and baseline data should be available. These targets essentially, when we go into the project appraisal, translate into the key performance indicators. Now, there has to be indicator for each level, that is for goal, purpose, output. There has to be different indicators, and there should be at least one indicator in each level. Now, goal indicators in case of MUTP improve urban quality of life and more effective institutions. These were the indicators. Measurement strategy was state budget and annual reports, the bank's progress report and assessment reports, and some stakeholder surveys were to be done during the project, which will tell how satisfied the people are and what is their response to various questions which were asked. And more effective institutions, as I told you, the implementing agencies had to be made capable of not only executing this project, but also to move forward. The purpose indicators were meet user demand. So in case of railway, reduce peak hour load from 4,500 to 3,600 in 2008. And in case of roads, it was defined as pedestrian road traffic accidents. Then there was an indicators for system efficiency, again purpose, increase peak hour train frequency from 13 to 15, availability of rakes from 91% to 94%. Then on the road, reduce journey time on Jogeshwari Vikhroli Link Road from 30 to 24. SCLR Santa Cruz Chembur Link Road 20 to 6. These indicators which were worked out. Similarly, for sustainability, working ratio, cost recovery of bus service, percentage of PS living in dwellings at least 225, 100%. And effective institutions, as I told you, MRVC was one, then TMU in the municipal corporation, technical transport planning, strengthen ambient air quality. The measurement strategy was reports of business and operating plans of suburban railway services updated annually as part of the project design appraisal. We had prepared a business and operating plan for the Mumbai suburban system that was to be checked annually with respect to what was planned and what is actually happening. Reports of business and operating plans of this, then midterm review and completion review. Now coming to assumptions and risks, these assumptions are essential to the project success but beyond its control, and risk, what is most likely to go wrong. I think in the last session also we had some discussion on risk management, but risk response matrix is universal. High cost, high probability of occurrence, just avoid it. The others you try to maintain, and the low ones just ignore them. Now the important thing to understand is that risk at a lower level will affect one step ahead. That means if we have something going wrong in the activities, the output will go wrong. Similarly, output will go if the purpose is not the risk, then the goal will go wrong. Now, if you look at this slide, within red, whatever is there is part of the project. Above that, what happens, at times you do everything, the outputs are there, the purpose is served, but the goal is not reached. But that is beyond the project area. Even after output, at times there won't be served of MUTP, which I will show you later, but that is beyond management control. Now, in case of MUTP, the goal, assumptions, and risks, government remains committed to, this is with respect to the goal, government remains committed to sector reforms, non-occurrence of any natural calamity or disaster. Now, purpose to goal, government's commitment to implement institutional reforms remains unchanged, which fortunately remained unchanged in this case. Political will and institutional commitment to implement user charges, which is surcharge in this case on railways, which was slightly delayed, but eventually it was put in place. Increase in demand do not overtake capacity increases. I'll come to this later on. Now, once the project has been designed, the next part is the project appraisal, which is done by the bank. Project appraisal is a very long exercise. It may just sound simple. I'll just go through what goes into project appraisal and how the implementing agency and the borrower, what all has to be done by them. The identification has to be done based on techno-economic studies. The institutional arrangement and policy imperatives have to be in place before the appraisal. There has to be a financing plan. Financing plan effectively in terms of a project, some kind of a financial closure, then financial and economic analysis, then a business plan to ensure sustainability, financial sustainability of the project, then social and environment impact assessment, environment action plan, resettlement and rehabilitation plan, then baseline socio-economic survey, communication strategy, and in the end, project implementation plan. Now, project implementation plan here just is a small 3 words, but it's a big book. It contains everything related to the project. It also contains everything related to project implementation, whatever are your procurement plans, how many contracts are you going to award, which contract would be ICB, which would be NCB. Everything is put into project implement. I think in the previous session, somebody asked that question whether the World Bank and other multilateral agencies insist on all tenders to be ICB. Now, I can tell you they don't insist on. They have a guideline that beyond a threshold, the tender should be ICB. But all these loans are negotiated, and there have been instances where they have agreed to terms and conditions where going beyond the NCB threshold, a tender which should have been ICB has been classified as national competitive bid. So there are ways and means of doing this. And in case of China, while they were getting a lot of World Bank funding around 20 years back, they had made a strange modification to the World Bank guidelines where they would insist, yes, it is an international bid, but it must have a Chinese partner, and eventually the manufacturing facility, if required, should come into China. And a lot of companies, big rolling stock companies, all of them set up their shop in China. Now, there's hardly time for discussion on project appraisal document, but I'll just go through the chapters of project appraisal document just to give you an idea of what went into the project appraisal document of MUTP. The first was project development objective, first chapter. It gave project development objectives and key performance indicators. I'll show you the key performance indicators later on. Then the strategic context in which the project has been envisaged and how it is going to help Then the project description summary, it gives everything about the project and it is part of the project appraisal document. Now, project appraisal document technically is an appraisal by the multilateral agency. But whatever goes into it is prepared by the borrower and the implementing agency. They only come and see it, but they will provide assistance in terms of a consultant which they will send. Now, these consultants are normally paid by the World Bank directly. They are not part of your project cost. But yes, they will send them. And there have been some instances, not in the case of MUTP phase 1, where they will ask the borrower or the implementing agency to hire a consultant, especially in terms of environment impact assessment, social impact assessment. But today, there are lots of firms within India. They may be international firms, but they have their setup in India. They have their own Indian subsidiary or office who are doing these kind of studies. Then the project rationale, we have to give whatever was thought and how it has been decided on these things. Then the project analysis, economic, financial, technical, institutional, environmental, social, safeguard policies. Now, safeguard policies, again, was mentioned in the previous session also. The World Bank and ADB have very strong safeguard policies. And the intent, I think, in the previous session about ADB and about AIIB and NDB, to give some kind of a relaxation in this safeguard policies. I don't think that is tenable today because they are virtually following the same guidelines which the World Bank and ADB are following. There's no difference. In fact, they are piggy banking on the guidelines of World Bank and ADB. Then sustainability and risk assessment. The main conditions of making the loan agreement effective and other legal aspects. Readiness for implementation. Now, readiness for implementation normally is not only the project implementing agency, whether it is in place or not. They also look at whether the overall environment in the city or in the state or in the country is conducive to take up such a large project, and there is capacity. If there is capacity is lacking, say for construction, if the capacity in the country or the city is not available to do that kind of a work, then they would put riders on how capacity enhancement is to be done, or they will ask the borrower and implementing agency to have dialogues with various construction companies within India, outside India, to ensure that there would be adequate construction capability when the tenders are invited. Now, this part is also taken care of by issuing a general procurement notice much in advance. Now, general procurement notice for a World Bank funded or ADB funded project means that it is published on their website that we are likely to take up such and such project, and these are the packages which will be offered, or these are the contracts which would be given for civil or S&T or whatever works, so that people are aware of such a project is going to happen in such and such city, in such and such country. And if there is a foreign partner, or if there is a even indigenous company who wants to expand and wants to have a JV or collaboration, they should be in readiness for the tender as and when it comes out. Then whether the entire process has been done following the policies of World Bank. And apart, after this, these are the various appendices which go into the project appraisal document. Project design summary, detailed project description, estimated project cost, cost benefit analysis, cost effective analysis, financial summary, revenue earning project entities, procurement and disbursement arrangement, project process. It's a huge list. Now, these are only appendices to the project appraisal document. Now, this project appraisal document has to be prepared before the World Bank loan can be negotiated. Forget about sanction. So this is a prerequisite for World Bank loan or ADB loan to be negotiated. Now, a lot of questions have been asked about what is for front-end fee and what are the repayment and how this. Let me remind you, when you go to these multilateral agencies, especially, I'm not talking of bilateral agencies right now, all these loans are negotiated. So the terms and conditions are negotiated and it can be decided whether they want to give waiver for this or not. As an example, I can tell you that if you want a loan only in rupee and repayment in rupee, they may agree, but the hedging charges which they will take will make that loan costly. Now it's up to you to decide whether you want to go into a single currency US dollar loan, or you want a multiple currency loan, or you want a local currency loan, because they can hedge it and offer you that loan because it is a negotiated loan. So they will ultimately tell you whatever has happened is negotiated. It's something like the land acquisition today we do by negotiation. Once the negotiation is done, the matter ends. The person cannot come again and say, no, you have not paid me correctly. So keep in mind that these loans are negotiable and we can negotiate a good deal for ourselves. Now in the project implementation also, before the project implementation starts, the project implementation plan, or some ADB calls it project administration memorandum, somebody calls it project management plan, it has to be in place. This slide I've taken from ADB's website. So there is a project memorandum, then the implement at the startup, then the implementation will start. For project performance reports, in case of what QPR, quarterly progress reports, and there's a midterm review, they will continuously happen, and there could be a need to redesign, and that's a continuous process. Now, midterm review in case of both these entities, especially ADB and World Bank, provide an opportunity to the implementing agency for reassessment of cost. Why I am telling this? Because as railwaymen, we were in the habit of making a project cost and then revising it every year. Now, when you have partners, especially in case of MUTP, where there were two partners, one was the state government and the other was the World Bank, you can't do that so often. You can't every day go and tell them that cost has gone up by 100 crores, because they also have to take their approvals and it affects the viability of the project also. So it is my request, the moment we are dealing with these multilateral or bilateral agencies, it is important that we work on completion cost. And completion cost can include some amount of contingency which may or may not be used. We can disclose it. I can give you an example. It's not an Indian example. It's a Southeast Asian country. What they do is they work out a project completion cost. They keep a contingent cost with them, and the implementing agency is asked to complete it within the completion cost. If they do it, they get some credit from the contingent fund, and the balance is retained by the exchequer. In case they go beyond that, that would be funded, but there is no incentive for the implementing agencies. So those kind of options can also be worked out. I think railway also once worked out something 1% or 2%. I don't know what happened to that. Now this is project cycle implementation documents, project administration memorandum, reports, then project completion reports, and the final is project performance audit report. Now, Unfortunately, in case of railways, we have almost given up on project completion reports. As a result, what is happening, we are not even aware of what happened post implementation of the project. Now, in case of World Bank and ADB, the project performance audit report is a very critical document, and it is always prepared 2 to 3 years after completion of the project, just to see what has happened and in terms of relevance, whether after 3 years, what was not still relevant, whether the project was effective, was it done efficiently, and the post project, is it being run efficiently, is it sustainable, and the institutional development which was done, is it effective and it is still working. Now, these are 5 important aspects which go into project completion report. I think way back, almost 30 years back, even railways talked about performance budgeting and performance audit of these projects. Unfortunately, we are not doing it, but the way we are going ahead, I think, and dealing with these agencies, it is important that we bring it back into normal stream. In fact, railways are not even making a financial project completion report, so I will not go into multilateral agencies. There's a word of caution. I have written it takes almost 2 years to get the loan sanction. It can take anything from 2 to 4 years to get the loan sanction. The funding agencies' guidelines involve approvals at all stages of tendering, causing delay in tender finalization. This I am saying from my personal experience. It may not be true. It depends on whether it's a straightforward tender or there are certain issues, because even the World Bank guidelines or ADB guidelines don't permit any negotiation post opening of tender. So, but we may at times have issues where something has. I can give you an example. This was a tender about cables. So some rates were quoted, and the same firm in the World Bank funded contract, and the same firm on a subsequent tender quoted lower rates for the same item. Now we had that information, and since negotiation was not permitted, we wanted the World Bank to give a relaxation in this particular case, because we know that this item is being procured at a lower cost. So there was some confrontation with the World Bank on this, but we stood on that and we decided, okay, we'll not take your funds, what World Bank and ADB call misprocurement. And we negotiated with the supplier and he gave it at the lower cost. Similar thing happened in the main EMU electrics for MUTP1. So it can take time, because when there is a difference of opinion, then it has to be resolved, and all efforts have to be made to resolve it before we go in for something like a misprocurement, because then it sends a wrong message to the multilateral agencies. Then too much emphasis on engagement of foreign consultants. There is another view. I will not get into it. In fact, want consultants to come so that they have a study tour to foreign countries. So I don't know who is to blame for this. Then there is a foreign exchange fluctuation. Yes. The advantage is there is a very significant advantage of funding from multilateral agencies. All parties are bound by a legal agreement. The agreement which go into this project, there's an agreement between the World Bank and Ministry of Finance. There's an agreement between the World Bank and the project implementing agencies. There's an agreement between the Ministry of Finance and the implementing agencies. There are n number of MOUs which are signed. There are, if more than 2 or 3 implementing agencies are involved, as in case of MUTP, there there could be financing MOUs between the entities which are involved, and all those are put in place before the loan is signed. It effectively means in a way, we are doing a financial closure for the project. The commitment fee which the World Bank charges is essentially that if you delay the project, there is a penalty for it. We may have got it waived off for a few years, but then it's a good thing so that it keeps pressure on completion, project completion. Then risks involving government's commitment are taken care of. Once a state government has committed that I'll provide these funds as counterpart funds for the project, they have to provide it. Then flow of funds to implementing agency is also assured. And the procurement procedures are internationally accepted. Now, this is very important, especially when we go for ICB. A large number of companies at times, they look at it that this is a tender only for cost discovery. They're not serious about it. So they are also not serious about submitting the bid. They will just work out something and give it. And it would be highly inflated at times. Now, once they know that it is a World Bank funded project, they will not take those chances because they know World Bank already has a repository of what all they have done in the past, and they cannot do something which is very deviant from what they have been doing in the past. So in a way, it is good and it gives some comfort. Yes, the offers will come. Now on MUTP phase 1, as I told you, MUTP phase 1 and MUTP phase 2 are part of the same Mumbai urban transport project. It was only for the purpose of World Bank funding and World Bank loan that they were bifurcated. MUTP 1 was important because that was the first major infrastructure project from a multilateral funding. This was sanctioned based on a comprehensive transport plan for the city. Most of you may now be aware of that all the metro projects in India cannot be sanctioned unless there is a comprehensive mobility plan for this study. But this I'm talking of 90s. It was a multimodal transport project. It had a railroad component and also a resettlement and rehabilitation. Then this was the first project where Indian Railways participated in resettlement rehabilitation of project affected households. Till then, the stand of Indian Railways was that it is the state government's responsibility and let them get it vacated. Now, get it vacated becomes very complicated and none of the state governments, because it's a vote bank for them. But this resettlement and rehabilitation, it was almost 50,000 families were resettled and rehabilitated as part of MUTP, out of which 15,000 for rail affected, project affected households. Then the project was sanctioned on economic rate of return. It has the business and finance plan had a financial rate of return also of around 10%, but the economic rate of return was 33%. And it went through right up to the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. So it was primarily sanctioned on economic rate of return. Now, when I say it was sanctioned on the economic rate of return, it's not that it didn't have financial rate of return for railways. Let me put it very clearly. The project cost borne by the railways was only 25%. Balance 75% was through state government and World Bank loan, and the World Bank loan was repaid through a surcharge which was put on the user, which is the commuters. So there was an economic rate of return for the railways, but not for the project. For the project, it was worked out as 10%. This project was sanctioned not on completion cost, but a mention was made in the project appraisal report that completion cost of this project would be so and so. It couldn't be sanctioned on completion cost because most of the works which were included in MUTP phase 1 had already been sanctioned in the pink book, and they were amalgamated into one work as so So since they were already sanctioned, the sanction cost, which was on the base price, was taken into consideration while sanctioning MUTP phase 1. As I told you, state government and railways only gave 25%, 50% was from World Bank, which was repaid through surcharge on commuters. This is the funding mechanism. The total cost, completion cost was 4,450 for MUTP phase 1, 806 crores each was given as a loan to Government of Maharashtra and Indian Railways by Ministry of Finance. 1,490 crores each was given by state government and Ministry of Railways. And the World Bank loan was paid through levy of surcharge collected by Central and Western Railways. And these are 15,000 families were rehabilitated, new lines were constructed, new trains were procured, maintenance facility, new technology. All this was output of this project. Now, MUTP 1 completion cost was 4,450, World Bank loan 1,612. If you look at the outputs, all the outputs which were given in the project appraisal documents were achieved. The KPIs, all the KPIs were achieved except crowding in trains in peak. This remained as it is. Now, whether the goal of the project was achieved or the purpose of the project was achieved, because this was a very critical thing. Now, what had happened, it is not that demand exceeded the supply. It was more than that. In 2003, Mumbai Metro Master Plan was also prepared, which was prepared by DMRC to be implemented in 10 years. And it had 7 or 8 lines, and especially east-west connectivity lines. Out of these, only one line, which is Warsaw Andheri Ghatkopar, was commissioned, and none of the others were commissioned. So while planning the comprehensive transport studies, what was planned in other sectors was not completed, and that put pressure on the suburban railways. Now again, today there are around 15 metro lines under construction in Mumbai. So I presume when those are completed, there would be some relief for the suburb. Now the next phase, MUTP 2A, that again, same thing, all the outputs were achieved, and crowding in peak hours still could not be achieved, but punctuality and trespass control, carrying capacity in terms of vehicle kilometer, etc., everything was achieved. Now, why I call it MUTP 2A, because MUTP 2 also had an element called MUTP 2B, which was the new lines which were to be constructed. We had kept it outside the purview of World Bank loan. It was done deliberately because there was a lot of resettlement and rehabilitation and land acquisition involved. And some of the projects, especially 5th and 6th lines from Borivali to Bombay Central, the land acquisition and resettlement and rehabilitation would take a lot of time, and in fact those projects have not yet been completed, so they were kept outside the purview of World Bank funding, and that part is still going on. Subsequently, MUTP 3 was sanctioned. This was sanctioned in 2016 December at a cost of 10,947. Again, in MUTP 3, we had proposed funding from multilateral agency, and we had engaged with the World Bank for funding of this project. Eventually, the DEA, Ministry of Finance, asked that instead of World Bank, it should be co-funded by World Bank and AIIB. The reason, DEA has a basket of projects which are being funded by World Bank, AIIB, New Development Bank, ADB, and they juggle around with what goes where. And so the first information we had that it has to be co-funded by World Bank and AIIB. When we got in dialogue with AIIB, they told us we'll just piggy bank on World Bank, whatever due diligence they are doing, we'll abide by the same. So you don't have to do anything specifically for AIIB. In the meantime, because MUTP3, the goals, objectives, purpose, everything was not different from what was MUTP. And in the meantime, the city had also evolved. And in the meantime, the country assistance strategy of the World Bank also changed. They were looking at a much larger portion of TOD. They had some issues with the projects which were identified and their priorities. And in the meantime, Ministry of Railways took a decision that instead of taking a loan for the rolling stock, we lease it through funds from IRFC. So the funds requirement suddenly came down as far as loan is concerned. So AIIB agreed for a 500 million loan, which is roughly around 3,500 crores, and 2,629 crores was the rolling stock component, which can easily be leased through IRFC, and this was decided. Therefore, the World Bank was left out of this process because World Bank in any case is now doing DFC Eastern Corridor. They're also into Rail Investment Development Fund. They're also into giving, recently they have been giving money for the COVID, this thing also. So they have been kept out of it. Now it is AIIB, and MUTP3 has been approved by AIIB. The only thing remaining is their negotiation and loan agreement. This project has already started. This negotiation was to be done in June, July, but I don't think now anyone would be going for signing of agreement. So on video calls, I think negotiation will be finalized and then signing of the loan agreement will take place. Beyond this, there's another project, MUTP 3A, which I just correct this slide. This is at a total cost of around 33,000 crores. Now, this has already been sanctioned in March 2019 and is now being prepared for posing to the multilateral agencies. The plan is budgetary grant 4,730 each by Government of Maharashtra and Ministry of Railways, loan of 3,500 each from Ministry of Railways and Government of Maharashtra, that is 7,000 crores. Now this 7,000 crores is to be split between two multilateral agencies, what has been planned, 3,500 from AIIB and 3,500 from NDB. Now what you see as deferred funding, 8,616. If you look at the previous slide, around 15,800 is only procurement of rolling stock, and a large chunk of it is also maintenance facilities for rolling stock. Now this deferred funding can be in terms of lease, either from IRFC or for a wet lease where maintenance is also a part of the supplier. Now those options are being explored. MRBC has already done a study on leasing of rolling stock outside from outside other than IRFC. So some decision would be taken, but this primarily would be taken care of through lease agreements for supply of rolling stock. Thank you very much. And now I'll take questions, whatever you have about this was only about the projects and answer most of the things possible. So if anyone has any issues. And I've also worked in. Good afternoon.
Sir, I do not belong to Mumbai, so maybe I'm asking you a very basic question. But what gauge is this Mumbai Metro project?
The railway, we are talking of Bombay Suburban. Bombay Suburban, the local trains are broad gauge with a wide bodied coaches. These coaches are 12 feet wide. The metros, whatever are coming, all of them are standard gauge.
Okay, sir.
There one line already functional, that is Metro Line 1. Another 15 lines are coming up in Mumbai. All of them are standard gauge. And railways are not involved in any one of them.
Sir, I'll ask a question. Based on your experience
Yes,
at MRVC, and considering that Mumbai Metro has come up in a big way, and they are constructing more and more lines, in fact, right outside Badhwar Park. So, sir, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that, at least based on the MRVC experience, it was possible for railways to take up more share of suburban transport in Mumbai?
I would look at it in a different way. We are talking of city with a 400 billion GDP. And if we intend increasing this GDP, we have a restriction of geographical area in Mumbai. So both metro and suburban are required. There's no doubt on that. Now coming to share of suburban, whether it will increase or whether it will decrease. Obviously, it will decrease. Let us be clear on that. It will decrease, but that will give you an opportunity to improve the quality of service and charge, if not at par with the metros, even 1/3 of metros, then your project becomes financially not only sustainable, it will start making money.
Sir, I am Ajay Shankar Jha, sir.
Yes.
Sir, what about, are you totally free in deciding the price? And if so, why the prices are still not very high like other foreign countries where the prices of metros are quite high? Because you are giving world standard service. Still, why are you keeping this price low? If you are having absolute freedom.
Fares, you mean fares?
Yes, sir.
Now, it's like the fares of suburban and metro are very different thing. So I don't know whether you are talking about suburban
Yes, sir,
fares or metro fares.
Sir. I'm talking of metro fare.
Metro fares. Now metros, different metros already have their own fare structures and fare fixation committees. Sir. And the ones in the Pune metro, where I've already worked, we already have a formula under PPP which has to be adopted for fares. Now, obviously, if we are doing it under PPP, it's a money-making thing. So, fare fixation committee has to take a call on what is to be done. Now, metro fares are definitely not very low in India in terms of the the affordability and income levels. So I don't know how you get that impression that metro fares in India are very low.
Sir, I visited at least 12, 13 countries and nowhere the prices are as low as is in Delhi Metro at least. Delhi Metro is very low, sir. Up to even you go to Paris, sir, or you go to even Czech, Prague, you go to Germany, at least the Netherlands, sir. The minimum fare is $1.40 for up to 4 stations. 4 stations means 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers.
I understand this thing that the fares in terms of equivalent rupee are much higher in other countries, especially the developed countries in Europe and US and other places. Sir. Now, if you look at in terms of purchase parity and income, what Sir. We are doing and what others are doing, I think we are not, in terms of percentage of purchase parity and average income, we are not that worse off. And DMRC, when you talk about DMRC had a fare fixation committee. They have been giving their recommendations. Unfortunately, they have been stalled for a large number of years, almost 8 or 9 years, when there was no fare increase. But metro fares, they are free. There is a fare fixation committee. Yes, government has a say. Now, as of today, for last 4 months, there is no metro running. So the fixed cost of a metro setup continues, but then that's how you do it.
Okay, sir.
That's it. Any more questions? Then, okay, Smriti.
Very
Thanks a
nice
lot.
experience sharing, sir. Very nice experience sharing. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I have a lot of questions, but then, you know, I don't want to monopolize everything myself. So.
That we can talk later.
Thank you, sir, for nicely explaining and presenting everything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay.